Hello, Grumpians. We are back in the room. We've just taken a prolonged month off purely for the fact that my head was melting trying to edit and do everything else that I've been doing for a year with the podcast. So, yeah, it was rejuvenating, and I've got some absolutely amazing guests lined up, which I think you're going to love. But before we start all of that, just a couple of parish notices. The first one is that the podcast episodes will not be weekly anymore. They will be bi-weekly, just purely for my mental state and health and well-being. And secondly, we've still got a couple of codes that we can pump out. So the first one for 15% off your North Core gear, use the code capital letters GrumpyPod15, and that'll get you 15% off any of your North Core surfing hardware, which I use. I use the leashes, the bags, the robies. They're absolutely amazing, so get amongst that. Also, Braw Surf, a Scottish brand, which also do an amazing YouTube channel and some awesome edits, have got a code for us, capital letters, Grumpy Surfer, to get 20% off any of your purchase for their merchandise on their website if you go to brawsurf.co.uk, and that's where you can find all their gear. Okay, so on the podcast today, a returning guest who actually put the first ever podcast on a few weeks back, John Thompson. We have got some absolutely killer stories for you from Afghanistan. I nearly cry. And John tells an awesome story that leaves my mouth flat on the floor. It's absolutely crazy, and I had no idea that it happened to him. So, please enjoy this week's podcast with John Thompson. Tomo, welcome back to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back. Part 3.
Part 3.
And the sun is shining outside. The rain's gone and blue skies are here. We're in summer, ads. We're in summer.
Yeah, it's just nice and warm, isn't it? Makes a change.
My palms are sweating. I'm quite nervous.
I don't know why you're nervous.
Well, welcome to my house again. Excuse the mess. Obviously, you know what it's like for having 2 children wake up and wreck the cleaning that you did before you all went to bed, because the house has got Lego everywhere and Nerf bullets. My boy had his birthday and he decided with his birthday money to buy a giant Nerf gun. So they're everywhere.
Yeah, I got my little girl a Nerf gun a while back, and yeah, they ended up all over the house, then outside, then we lost them all. I don't know how you can lose like 40 Nerf bullets.
Yeah. By 1,600. I keep getting shot in the ass. But my boy's going through a really strange thing where he likes to poke me in the ass and punch me in the ass. So maybe that's just a boy thing. I don't really remember it. Maybe we've got a strange one.
Yeah, maybe.
He's mental.
What have you been doing up to? What have you been doing up to? What's been going on?
What have I been doing up to? You've been spending too much time in the West Country, my friend.
I'm too much Devonshire, ain't I, boy?
Yeah. What have I been up to? Not much, really. Just growing as a man, which is quite, I don't know, hippie-ish. I don't know whether I'd had my spine operation the last time we spoke. I had it in December. I don't think I'd had it.
No, well, we did the first podcast in June, so it's just been over a year.
So I was waiting out on lots of painkillers in the psychedelic, trippy world of opiate-based painkillers for an operation, and then COVID had happened, and the operation was put off. So I managed to get the operation in December, which was fantastic. Best thing I've put in a private hospital, which was great. Was kind of shell-shocked going in there when the nurse said, here's the menu, and opened up this TGI Friday-sized menu and said, after your operation, what would you like to eat? I was like, I don't know. What can I have? And they're like, the turkey and cranberry and brie is delicious. I was like, yeah, Jen. But yeah, it was good. Woke up, walked straight away, had a great Christmas, off painkillers. And then start the whole rehabilitation process into getting strong and mobile again, which is where I'm at now. And a whole journey of my continued life journey of reflection and putting to bed things that you think about to make you a better person, to make you the best version of who you are, have ever been, or ever will be at this present moment. That continually gets better, and that's where I'm at.
It must be a bit weird for you, because I know being a busy bloke, or being a sergeant major as you were, so kind of, this is going to sound really bad, you're doing your rehab stuff when you leave in December, but you kind of, once you've done that, you're kind of a loose plethora. You're not really doing too much, so it must be kind of strange. I mean, I'm in a kind of a same situation as well, where I'm leaving next year, so I've got a job to do, but I'm also focusing on other things. But those other things, in the military, we want everything to come right now. It needs to happen now, or we are fixers. So if something's broken, we go and fix it straight away. And life and people don't work like that. I'm going to call it, normal people don't work like that.
No, they don't.
So you are having to take your time to go through that process of doing it.
Well, I think the way that I understand that is we have no patience, because we're preparing for a mission all the time. Mission. And there is always battle prep, so concurrent activity in which to do in order to get ready for that mission, because we have an H hour in which we're going to then do the mission, or we're going to depart. But for me, it was extremely frustrating, because everything for my future is time sensitive, and it doesn't start until December, January, February 21/22. So I am marking time, which initially was so frustrating and so worrying, because you felt inept and inadequate, kind of like your hands were tied behind your back and your legs were tied together, but you've got to go somewhere, but you can't do it. So it's really, really frustrating until you get to this stage where you just go and you let go of all the control which has been integrated into our characters over the last 22 years. So I've managed to let go of that, and an amazing privilege. Initially, I was really bitter about COVID happening and me leaving, but lots of people would have been in the same thing. There was no pomp or fanfare or here's the goodbye or sort of the end of your career. So I was quite bitter about just being at home and then losing a sense of identity. But now I've just managed, it's kind of like dissipated, and I wake up, feel great, kids up, and I do the dad thing and be the best dad that I possibly can be. But I'm still waiting, but I'm being paid. It's great. Do you know what? It's great.
I've been thinking over the last few months, and it started to occur to me a little bit, that I remember when we were at 4-2 Commando together, back in 2005. I was there. I was there 2004 to 2007 when we went onto a training team, and I just remember walking around and knowing everybody. You knew what's going on, and you knew everybody's business, so to speak, and it was quite a invigorating time, But now, when I look back at it, you realise that you're there in that moment. And now, when I don't really know that many people, don't know any anti-tankers anymore, the courses that come through, like on the PTI course, obviously I'm a PTI, so I don't really know those guys as well. And I'm very much have been for the last sort of 10 years, almost like working on my own.
Yeah.
Under my own steam, doing my own thing, still putting a little bit of output there, but focusing on the things that, I want to do. But it almost kind of segregates you from everyone else. So in my head, it's like, I remember being, it's that classic cliche, the guy walking down the street and he's got his fingers out and he's walking down with a big strut. You go, hey, pointing his fingers out. So he's the man. But now you kind of look back and go, well, actually...
And that's how it felt when you were surrounded by the rest of this group.
Yeah.
As you were saying that, I was just thinking, it's kind of like the analogy where it's like your first paper round. It's the first week of your first paper round and it's hoofing. Or you never know how good life is when you're a school kid until you've left and then you move on. So kind of like that, you're surrounded by people. It's the best it's ever going to be. You've got almost no responsibility, but you have got lots of responsibility to be an adult and make your own decisions. And then as you progress, like we've done, and you become self-managing, that's great as well, because you've had all of that interaction with other people. But it can become a really lonely place and a cynical place where you start to look at the larger organisation and can potentially feel sorry for yourself because you don't have those close connections. And the only time that we would have them is probably in the mess, or if we walk past each other, or occasionally when people take a trip back to Commander Training Centre in Lympstone, and then you just seem to see everybody that you know. And then you get that reconnection to a wonderful past, whereas it's almost the correct way to evolve through a career where you suddenly lose connection and are ready to leave as you grow, because you're doing that with a family as well. And
there was the RSM here where I am at the moment a few weeks ago. He left, and I think it was quite fitting because there was a detail pushed out and he went out on the tunnel and everyone, lined the main drag and clapped him out, which I think was pretty cool. I mean, yeah, he's like, the main man. He's the senior NCO of the camp. And, he ran sort of like the background stuff. But for somebody that isn't sort of like that higher rank or that higher, let's call it a higher priority, like for me, for instance, I've kind of accepted now that when I come to leave next year in May, that I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to go, have everyone, pat me on the back, going, oh, well done, ads, all that. And I love, I know I talked about it last time, is the Indispensable Man Poem.
Yeah.
Where
I was looking at it on OneDrive today when I was trying to see some memories.
So where you put your hand in the water and that's you in your job, and then you take it back out again, and then the void where your hand comes out gets filled. And I think that's such a pertinent part of any form of job, or your place in the world, is that anyone can be replaced.
Absolutely.
But it's your experience that you draw out of it, and I think the other thing is as well is that no one's that important and above other people either.
Absolutely. And I think it is the proper development in people to the state of, what people would say, the state of nirvana. I'll mess up that theology, but to the point where you reach, you understand who you are and your place, and not get caught up with your ego of who you are. Because I'm the same. No pomp and ceremony, but why should we have pomp and ceremony? Why should Jim have had everyone clap him out? Ultimately, everyone eats a dodgy curry, then they shit themselves. There's no pecking order on a toilet when you've got diarrhea.
And that's the best analogy I've ever heard.
And everybody's exactly the same, aren't they? You eat dodgy curry, you
yeah.
But for us especially, because we've been part of this organisation and don't understand how the real world works, unless you do a lot of skiving off. I'm looking at you.
I'm not rolling my eyes at all.
It's hard to find your place because nobody else in the civilian world gives a shit about each other, and that'll be hard for us to deal with because we were part of this team. And that's we're going to talk about war and things in a minute. But I sent somebody this to send to their partner, and it says, "You are totally replaceable at work. You're not replaceable at home. Home is your real life. Keep that in perspective always." And also reminded me of I think it was one of the lads posted something on Facebook, and it was something along the lines of, it doesn't matter how I feel when I go to pick the children up from school, I go there in the best state possible because they need to see me in the best state possible, and I need to have these good relationships. So it's kind of good that we feel the loss of our organisation and the draw to actually what matters, which is family and the real world, because ultimately everything's made up. The lines on the road, they're fucking made up by somebody. Oh, we'll put this road here. There's no rules for it, and we don't have to follow these rules. And that is a development in us to become more ambitious, more innovative people. And you can only become innovative if you feel peace and freedom, and not non-attachment to the strict boundaries of which we've been used to. The most successful people are the people who cuff things, the ones who bend the rules, the people who stick to the rules. They're continuity, but they're not going to change the world. not in the ways in which we want to change the world and live our lives. Because ultimately, I think we need to change our children's worlds, and we do that by letting go of military-wise, especially combat people like Ads and myself, and the rest of our comrades. Is we just shed all of that and become these new people, because we have to. Because I'm not a sergeant major anymore. Well, I am on paper, but I don't feel like it. I feel like a civvy. I haven't shaved for a year, and I love it. Absolutely love it. I've put my hands in my pockets. If I could grow my hair, I would. Fuck, would I? God, would I grow my hair if I could? But I can't. But yeah, exciting times ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
Built upon the wonderful testing experiences that we've had. And the majority of those will be combat experiences, because they're the ones that really provoke thought.
So a lot of the feedback I've had from the podcast itself, and putting a few things out on Instagram, a few little, Chad questions and stuff, what people want to listen to more of is, they want to hear about like combat experience and stuff, because I was, it was Armed Forces Day, Sunday?
I think so, yeah, loads of people.
26th of June was Armed Forces Day. And it just reminded me of my first ever time away was 2002. So after the September 11th.
Yeah, I saw the picture you posted.
So that was literally taken 2 days after I'd landed in the mountains. To be honest with you.
At Bravo Company?
No.
You were Zulu?
I was in X-Ray Company, yeah. So
4-5.
Yeah, and
I just had to say every company name before I got to X-Ray.
I would have just said, yeah, that's right, yeah. But it was really strange because that whole time I never knew where I was. The only time I did was when I was on the Pakistan border, and there was a flag on the hill where it denoted Afghanistan to Pakistan, which was mega random. But yeah, it was, and that was 2002. So that's 19 years since the first time I properly went away. Now, I've never, some bootnecks that listen to this or military people that listen to this are probably going to cringe at this, but I've never done a major exercise. I've done a few Norways. That's about it. I've never been on ship. Bear in mind, I'm a Royal Marines Commando, so, we're sea soldiers.
You're not?
Never been on ship.
What a sprog.
Well, the only ship I ever went on was I did the
Yellow Submarine?
No. That was smoking something before I joined up.
Yeah.
The only ship I ever went on was HMS Belfast, which was a cadet ship down in Portsmouth. Yeah. And the only reason why I went on that is because we did a demonstration for the James Bond premiere that came out, Die Another Day. So I had to sleep on ship. That's the only time I've ever been on ship. True story.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. So the only time I
love being on ship.
Well, the only time I've ever done anything is been going away. So Jacana, Afghanistan, Talik, Iraq, Herrick 5, Afghanistan again, and 12, Herrick 12. So the only times I've ever really been away is doing that. And then, the surfing trips I've been on and stuff like that. But that's kind of, buckshee, isn't it, really? Which is kind of crazy to think back that, 11 years of being in anti-tanks and doing soldiering, the majority of that, I was either training to go away or we were teaching people to fight to go to Afghanistan, like on a training team, which is quite random. The second half of my career, I was just, messed about and gone surfing and done shit I shouldn't have done. But
I was talking to people recently, and a very special person. I'm not going to name any names, but a very special person. And she asked me, do you think about things? Because obviously people are interested, aren't they? Because if they know a little bit about who you are and where you've been and what you've done, they want to know whether they're sleeping next to Grant Mitchell was going to fucking lose it because he's got Falkland nightmares going on in his head, which I don't. But they're really interested in it. Because they are interesting times. They're brutal times. They're formative times. They're thought-provoking times. They're reflective times. They're the times that give you the skills, kit and equipment in which to pull yourself out of any hole that you find yourself in, and also to continue to rise high and adapt to any situation that you're being successful in. But I think you missed something from going on ship, because it is amazing. It got worse. Well, the ships got better for us, but the conditions of the ability to have fun got worse. But it's basically four meals a day, pile the plates up, piss off the caterers, pick up phones that are around the ship and intercom and phone people that you don't like and cock them over the phone. You used to be able to make tannoys over. You used to be able to make ship-wide tannoys from anywhere in the ship, which bootleggers would take the piss out of. We would have motorbike gangs on ship, so guys would just sort of have to some guy would start a motorbike gang, and basically what he'd do is have an invisible motorbike that he would get on and off, and he'd have his helmet, and then the ship would they'd go around the ship just riding as a motorbike gang, and then you'd have tannoys from the ship's captain saying, "Can the motorbike gang please stop because it's blocking stuff up?" And then you do fizz 3 times a day and use all the water showering, save up 2 cans a day from the beer bosun, and then have parties. It's amazing. Sail somewhere, get off, do an exercise, then have a run ashore, which is sort of time where you are, and that's how you saw the world. You know, from the advert, that's how you saw the world. You know, I went to the pyramids, went to the Colosseum in Rome, went all over the Mediterranean, Southeast Asia, North America and Canada, the South Pacific, and you just saw the world, and that's what part of the deal was. We joined at the best time.
Just turn that so it's facing towards you again.
This bit.
Yeah, so the red bit's facing towards you.
All right.
That's it.
Yeah, so we joined at the best time to see different things, but yeah, it's the combat operations that really amalgamate everything. And you mentioned Herrick 12 there, so I think in the first podcast we predominantly spoke about 5.
Yeah, we got
training.
Well, I want to spin a little story at first. So I was that photo that was taken that I put up on Instagram.
I thought you were the Bush Tucker man then.
I felt like the Bush Tucker man.
Yeah.
I thought people had absolutely rinsed me because I looked like some, Aussie SAS guy,
Yeah.
which was kind of, I think, what I was going for.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. But I remember, so we got flown up into the mountains in I think it was a Chinook. Maybe it might have been a Sea King, and the helo didn't land. So we had to step out of the helo onto the ground while it was hovering.
Yeah.
But as we were getting out, one of the lads had the GPMG and had it upside down, had cocked it and made it ready, but didn't put the safety catch on. And as he was standing up, he put a burster 7.62 through the floor of the Sea King, and that was my first contact.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, but yeah, so we were talking from the end of Afghanistan, Herrick 5. We talked about the ambush that we were involved in, but there was loads of other skirmishes from that point that we were involved in, which were really random. I think there was so many. I think it was every other day, wasn't it? For like 7 months.
I think it was about 35 of them. I know Fat Boy had a whole list of them, I think, and he did send me some stuff because I wanted to kind of document, because I never made a diary, which I really wish I had done, and I didn't take any photographs, which I really wish I had done now, because the memories, unless I'm speaking to somebody, I just don't remember. I don't know if we spoke about. Did we speak about Nowzad? That was good contact. There's some of them I can't even remember.
Well, we can talk about that, because I thought that was probably there was 2 places that I thought on Herrick 5 were the most random ever. And the first one was, when we went really far north, and we got told it was the first time that anyone in that region had seen, this is going to sound racist, but it's not, ever seen white folk before. Oh my God. I thought it was really weird. And
I think we went to a place called Tisney.
Yes, that was it, Tisney, yeah. And
so it's past Musakala, which is the furthest north that anyone had ever been. And then Tisney was, I don't know, about 10, 20k after that. Yeah,
I thought it was really weird because it reminded me of the Lord of the Rings. And it reminded me of like the guys, the humans going into an area where they'd never seen them before. I thought it was really weird, and I just remember I've got a couple of photos that I took up there. I mean, if I put them up on Instagram, it'd just be like another guy in the mountains of Afghanistan. But it's kind of the story that goes behind it, I think.
Yeah, but I also think the topography of the ground changed as well. So
it's crazy.
So when you're talking about Sangin, in the summer it'd be lush and green around the irrigation and water courses, and then it goes into kind of a rolling desert with really small, I'm going to say really small tussock grass, but it's not. It's kind of, from a distance, it looks like somebody's just got a moss gun and shot it in scatter mode. So you got like regular bits of moss everywhere. But then as you go further north, it turns into almost like jagged, dark brown rocks. So it's really bad for vehicles to drive down. So the angles of the angles of the way the ground slopes is quite extreme. And I think we saw armor up there as well. I'm pretty sure I saw a warrior up there, and might have been 12.
I didn't go that far north on 12. We only went to Nowzad.
But it was just this changing ground, and that's what's so wonderful about it. Is I'm going to sound like a hippie halfway through all of this, mate. I'm going to sound like a hippie, just because I think really deeply about it. Is that when you start off in Sangin and it's lush and green and there is vegetation, it's kind of like your youth, and you go through this because Sangin's dangerous, this crazy, tumultuous, intense, powerful, emotional, risky world.
Which is cliche Wild West, isn't it?
And then as the further you go north, there's still danger and risk, just like in life, but it gets a little bit more barren, and you can see a little bit more, and therefore it becomes slightly more peaceful, and you become wiser, and you can take time to make your decisions. But it's still new terraforming land, and it actually becomes a bit scarier, because as you progress through life and it ultimately comes to its ending, that becomes a scary place, but you feel at peace in this scary place. Whereas Sangin is just student night, pound a pint, ladies everywhere, and this is crazy, what we're going to do, and you're just reacting. So the tours were just a 6-month tour was just a journey through life. But you don't even think about that now. At the time, you're just like, this is amazing. Now I'm going to have some ice cream. This is amazing. Now I'm going to have some ice cream.
Would you remember driving from Fob Price and driving? We missed that Sangin because we were going towards Nowzad, and it was really, really random. So exactly what you're talking about there with like the moss gun. All I remember is we went down the dip.
What, that big white mosque?
Yeah. No, not that one. That was in. That was up by Kandahar.
Yeah.
Not Kandahar, Kajaki. We went to it on Herrick 12. We were around that area. But when we went up to Nowzad, there was a bit, the ridge that was, if you're looking north, there's like a ridge line that runs down the right-hand side of it.
Mm-hmm. Crocodile Ridge.
Yeah, so Crocodile Ridge.
And it's got a cut in the middle.
Yeah, so the other side of that, you just reminded me of something saying that, big cut in the middle. We'll talk about it in a minute. And that whole area for about, I think it must have been like a 5k square was just green.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really random, completely green, but then everywhere else was just desert. And I just thought it was like, I think I might have a couple of pictures of it as well, just kind of sitting down and eating something, but it was just like green. And then we ended up going up to the other side of this ridge line, and we were putting in an OP to do a bit of Overwatch, because I think Lima Company we were in Nowzad at the time.
Whichever company Bugsy was in.
Yeah, so it was Lima Company, yeah. But when I say you reminded me of something, do you remember going through that pass?
I do, yeah. That's where we got shot out by a 107 Chinese rocket.
Yeah, and then there was a couple of sporadic bursts being fired. Because it was basically like
we ran. One of the lads got run over by a Viking.
Yeah,
battle casualty replacement he's called Tomo. Not me, obviously. But I was at 40 with him, and I didn't remember this because you're so maybe it's just because I'm an ignorant, egotistical prick, but I'm so involved in what's going around, and then I leave everything to distant memory and crack on. But he literally came out, got out of the Viking, and then the Viking reversed and ran over him, which is, I don't know, they're what, 10 tons?
They're heavy.
Yeah,
that's just lying on a bit of grass at the moment at the back of camp, but. Yeah, that was a really weird situation as well, because you always get taught not to go around areas that you could have high vantage points either side.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a classic like in The Rock, where they're in the shower room and they're all in all on the balcony and shooting down into the thing. That's literally what it was.
Well, I was talking to somebody the other day, and so one of my friend's kids, actually, who's really into World War I, World War II, and we were talking about Afghanistan, not in a brutal, graphic way, this is what somebody's head looks like. None of that. But in a way that you just are walking into contact.
It was called Recce by Fire, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so people would look at things like the Peninsular Wars and the Napoleonic Wars and World War One, trench warfare, where how could people just stand up and walk towards death? And that sounds extreme, especially when we're saying it. And if military people listen to this, they might think, "Oh, that's a bit cheesy." But literally,
well, it's what we were doing.
That's exactly what we were doing. So the change from the only time where it didn't happen would have been in World War Two. So World War One, people were getting up and walking forward, and then they would be ambushed by machine gun fire because of smoke and the fog of war over no man's land. Slightly different because they actually had uniformed enemy, but we didn't. And the worst thing was, it was clear. So there was line of sight from anyone. So snipers just, thank goodness they're shit shots in the main, or else you and I sat on that raised seat, which is raised above everybody else's fucking seat.
There's a YouTube video of me from Sky News that I could probably post.
Yeah. It's just a big white-faced target. Because there's no cam cream, obviously. There's no desert cam cream because it would just melt off, even if there was anyway, and you wouldn't fucking wear it. You just get shot in the face. And you're literally walking through opportunities for somebody to kill you.
When that's what happened. So we'd come up to Crocodile Ridge, we'd put that OP in, and then we drove round to the north of the Crocodile Ridge, and then I think we went through that little pass.
Yeah, so
and then we came from the north, didn't
company was so where Crocodile Ridge would go. Obviously, it moved vertical from south to north, with a ridge approximately halfway across the centre of it. To the southwest was Nowzad, which kind of looked like what's that city? No, you said Lord of the Rings. What's that city? Gondor. Looked like Gondor because it's at the base of a hill and then goes up into a hill as well. Not as extreme. It doesn't have the White Tower or whatever.
Is that Helm's Deep?
Yeah.
Helm's Deep's in the mountain, isn't it?
Yeah, so is Gondor. It doesn't matter for
It
this.
doesn't matter.
A couple of geeks. But then north of that and sort of to the west of the northern tip of the Crocodile Ridge was another village. And we got contacted from there and between Nowzad and that village. But people did put an OP up or at least went up on foot into the centre of that. And I think there was like farmers and shepherds up there who had been up there for a while, who were calling in attacks on Nowzad. And I remember we used to have a really short terp. A terp means an interpreter, so an Afghan guy he was from the. I want to say Sunni, but it's not Sunni. It's one of the Afghan tribes that is the smallest amount of people, so therefore the most persecuted. And he was brutal, and he used to just sit on top of a Viking rather than be inside a Viking as we were driving along with his helmet and goggles on, and he had a stick. And he used to, when he saw people and they wouldn't answer his questions, he used to hit them with a stick. Can't remember what it's called. It's really short. It's about your height.
Wasn't me.
It's about your height, yeah. But that was, and we moved across the ground, and it was great. But and it was obviously a unique tour because subsequent tours like Herrick 12 weren't the same.
It was a little bit kinetic at the end of there, wasn't it? We'll move on to that in a sec, but it was a different kettle of fish because I think Herrick 5 and was it 8 or 9 that the lads went on?
5, 7, and 9.
Yeah, they were a little bit more kinetic, but then the ID tactic came in, didn't it?
In fact, we got hit by the first IED at that Nowzad.
No, it was Kajaki. That was Marty Pellin's vehicle, wasn't it? That went over. It reversed, because it was behind me.
Was it called Sprite?
Yes.
Who was the driver? Really, really energetic guy.
I don't know.
Blonde hair. I think he's a surfer now.
Couldn't tell you.
Oh.
But yeah, they reversed over it, and because that's where Mick Cal got his military cross from, for getting the guys out the back of the Viking that drove over the IED.
Oh, that's what he got.
That was a weird little weird little
Sorry,
scenario.
I've got a fly in this room. You know, the one fly that you get in your house in summer that makes you feel like you've got a dirty house.
Well, your door was open. It's gone now. Sort of. Oh, yep, it's gone out the window. There we go.
Yeah, so.
Pausing podcasts for flies.
Yeah. But, I mean, so I know 7 and 9 were kinetic as well. And, you know, people were losing their lives. And we lost the largest amount in, I think it was 9, about 14 guys, which is obviously horrendous.
Well, let's talk about that then. So we came back from Herrick 5 and then we went on to train teams for 2 or 3 years. And then we've kind of mirrored our careers, really, haven't we, to a certain extent. So we were on a train team. You went and did some other things as well. At Lympstone, but then we both ended up back at 40 to go on to Herrick 12, and that was in 2009. Is that right? 2009, 2010. So 2010 is when we deployed to Afghan. And I'll tell you something about that. So when I kind of volunteered to go back to 40 commander to go out to Afghanistan. I think it was more of a case of I wanted to not beat a demon, but because I got Kazivax from Herrick 5 at the last 2 weeks before we came home, or supposed to come home, I really wanted just to go back out there just to show to myself that it hadn't affected me that much. But as we started to do the training, and then I realised that where I was in Bravo Company, we were going to be more mobile. So we were going out in these, like the Wimmicks or the Land Rovers that we had with machine guns and stuff on the top. These are like more bigger vehicles, more heavy duty. Jackals, yeah. But then we also got the Mastiffs as well. And I went and did the Mastiff Commander's course. And to get in and out of a Mastiff, you either have to go through the cupola at the top, which is in the middle of the vehicle, or you go through the back door. That's the only way in and out. And I remember sitting there, like doing the command stuff that you do for the course. And I was going, if I get blown up in this, I'm dead.
Oh, yeah.
I am literally dead.
You're fucked.
And I was not apprehensive, but I tried to keep pushing it into the back of my head because of what had happened before. And it didn't really affect me, but I think I was really quite nervous about it as well.
Well, but the thing is, you've had all the experience that we had on Herrick 5 in open and unarmoured vehicles. You've got situational awareness, so you have an element of control by your understanding of the battle space. Whereas when you went into a Mastiff or a Ridgeback, which a Ridgeback was a smaller version of a Mastiff, this thing's like 30 tons and £1 million with bar armour all over it, which goes slow as shit. And then I think there's a Husky as well, which looked like a sports car kind of version of one. When you go from that, where you've got closed down situational awareness and you can't hear what's going outside, you're just looking for a small armoured window, which is probably, 12 inches by 8 inches. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. You don't know where you are at all. You're just counting on the skill of one person who's the top cover to give you the situational awareness. And when you're the commander, you really need to be the top cover, as well as having a top cover guy.
But what was really interesting about this, so I was really apprehensive and nervous about it, but kind of brushing over it a little bit, is a statistic for you that makes me laugh now. But back then I didn't really think about it. I got blown up 22 times in a Mastiff when we were up at Fob Inkerman.
Shit the bed, did you?
22 times.
Fuck, I've lived a charmed life. I've never been blown up.
So altogether, being Kazivac back from Herrick 5, 23 times have been blown up by IEDs.
Jesus.
I got another story that I'll talk about a little bit later on when I was with the Americans and I nearly died again there, which was horrendous. That's why I changed branches. Anyway, digressing. What was I saying? Yeah, so at the back of Fob Inkerman, there was like a big open area where the Americans had just left loads of containers and stuff there. And that was like a graveyard. So every time an upload, which is like a big vehicle convoy that used to come up from Sangin to like do some resupplies and stuff, if the helos couldn't come in, which was the majority of the time because the airspace was controlled by small arms fire.
Just for anyone listening, Op Loam is kind of like a desert caravan of loads of slow-moving vehicles going in one line, which you try and protect. So it's such a sitting duck, easy target. That brings water and food and things like that.
It's just a resupply chain, isn't it? And and I forgot what I'm saying there.
So it's a graveyard.
And then they'd come up, they'd drop all the resupply off, and then they'd pick all the busted up vehicles and take them back to Jackson, and then back to Bastion. They get backloaded again, back to Bastion. It was just like super crazy. And I remember we took over from was it the Green Jackets? No, the Rifles. And I remember being in Bastion before we flew out to Inkerman, and they were saying it's horrendous. You can't go out of the gate because there are IEDs everywhere, and you'll get shot at within 100 meters of being outside the gate, and you can't run away because you have to Valen. So a Valen is like a mine detector that basically, as you leave a compound or you go on patrol, whereas you used to be able to go out loosely and just go walking, you can't do that. You have to walk really slowly. The guy at the front, or you've got two guys at the front that are mine sweeping to check that there's any IDs there. And then being the commander, you have a load of spray tins that you have in your hand or in your pocket, and you're spraying this lane down. And then if anything happens, you can't just go to the nearest cover. You have to run back down that lane again, and hopefully there's a bit of cover that you can jump into, because if you jump out of that lane, they're probably drawing you into an area that's covered with IEDs and take you all out. It was crazy.
It's mental, because you're channeled in how you move anyway, because you're channeled in the direction in which you can go and the direction in which you can clear the ground with those metal detectors of the Valens. But you're also channeled in the speed and time in which it takes to get anywhere, because you're all carrying fucking shitloads of kit in a high threat, therefore high intensity and high stressful environment, and it's red hot. So you can only carry so much water, and you've got to do a 14-hour patrol, so it's exhausting. And then as a commander, horrendous as a Valen guy, because you literally are looking at the ground with your minesweeper. You've got a rifle and you've got a pistol, but you're responsible for everyone's life. And when IDs have gone off, the guys who are on the Valens, because an ID will normally be set to go off, not on the point man, but somewhere in the middle to cause the greatest level of devastation and distraction, or at both extremes to take the front and last guy out. The guys who are minesweeping take it really, really badly, and they think that they failed because they've gone past something. But actually, it's a sophisticated enemy that's planted their weapon system to hit to be most devastating. But that was a change in face of warfare. Whereas before, we were at, like I was saying, you were walking into death, whereas this time you were crawling into death because your ability to not use speed and jump into any level of cover or ditches that you possibly could, because that's where they would plant a secondary IED, which would then explode. So initial one would go off, boom, cause disruption. You then move into cover. They've already sighted and recce'd the area where the cover was. You'd move in there, and then there'd be some command wire dug into a wall or something, and a HME homemade explosive tub, 50 litres of explosives, and then they'd let that off, and then kaboom. And then they'd wait, and then a helo would come in, or a Kazivac at another point which they'd recce'd, and that's where they put a tertiary IED. So that it was a really sophisticated enemy. So the subsequent tours, you could see how, because we would come in and take over for somebody, and then they say all these scary stories, and your initial reaction is, come on, you obviously haven't been doing things right. Whereas that isn't the case. They would have been facing a different enemy, because the enemy would then rule on out as new fighters came in, and then they'd go on leave or their holiday, and then it would change with summer and winter tours.
Well, this is how blasé it was. We got there.
So it was complex.
We were driving up and down the road there, which was called the 611.
611?
And we'd been going up and down there, had no ID strikes for maybe a month, 2 months, and this is how blasé it got. We were doing post runs from one end of, so the sort of like the middle third of...
Yeah, so you drive down to Jackson and get stuff. And
get some and then
out.
drive back again.
Yeah.
But then stuff started getting blown up, and it all changed. Did you do any ground patrols when you were out there?
Well, I did in support of the troops. So I can't remember what it's called, but we were based along the road from Jackson to Inkerman, Barney, a place where Barney was, and Clem.
That would have been not Ezra.
They changed all the names to Afghan names for some reason.
Do you know what? I really can't remember the names of the.
So,
I remember a few of them.
So we're I'm pointing at a table. So you got Jackson here in the centre with a high ground.
Yeah.
And then along this wadi, going here, you had a 5-story building.
Right.
And then you had a road coming to the left of that. So you go through the market, come up over a hill, and there was an ANP station.
Yep.
And then you just go over the brow slightly, and up and right on the hill was where Barney and Clem were.
Yep.
Which was like hugely exposed. One of my lads, Kev, got shot just driving up the hill into the base. And then there was another PB where I think Al Hewitt was.
Yep.
Well, that's a cracking story, that when they were closing that down. Fuck me. And then Inkerman was further on. So that's where we were based after we came down from Kajaki. So I deployed late because I had a cancer scare. So I was all ready to go as one of the troop sergeants. And then I started to shit blood. And I thought, I need some anusol. Go and see the doctor who fingered my hoop and said, you're not going anywhere. And I was like, but I'm going to Afghanistan in a week, doc. And he's like, you're not going anywhere. And he put like this ancient torture device up which looked like a duck, a metal duck. And it went quack, quack, quack. And he took his eye and looked at my eye and said, you're not going anywhere. So I had a biopsy in this cancer scare, which was an emotional time. Emotional to see my troop go without me, and I'd done the recce for Kajaki with the rifles, which is really strange because this is what I found different between Herrick 5 and 12 was the handover. Their OC was telling our OC, so officer commanding of the company, which is a major, look, here's a graph of how much less we fired than the last tour, and showed the depreciation in the quantities of munitions fired. Now that's great if that relates to stability and peace that's coming into the battle space, which is what you hope for. But that's not what was happening. It was still very unstable, but there was the less desire at the strategic level by commanders to fire. So that what they're doing is basically trying to come up with ideas of how to get peace quicker by being innovative with their approach. But there'll be times when we were told, right, we're having a vote in Sangin Valley, which means fucking zero, because nobody came to vote anyway, and nobody was going to vote. It's not like some random farmer and his wife's going to come and go, right, we're voting against the Taliban, because they just have their heads cut off and then to be shot and their children sold into slavery. But there'll be like, you're not firing any automatic weapons on voting day. Well, no, you can't put that restriction in, because if you're in contact, then you've got to save your life, and you've got under something called Card Alpha, which is the rules and laws of engagement, you can use any appropriate level of force in which to do it. So I found 12 quite restrictive by my commanders for that. It
was almost kind of the point where you had to fire until fired upon. What was that, Under Siege?
Yeah.
You can't fire until you fired upon, which was bonkers, because we were watching I remember being in the CP in Inkerman, because my troop sergeant got flown back for some welfare stuff. So I took over as the troop sergeant job about maybe a third to halfway. Sarge! Towards the end. And I remember just sitting in the CP watching this drone footage and watching guys digging IEDs into the floor.
Yeah.
And I remember we went and we did a clearance up, and there was not a 105 shell, it was a 2,000-pound JDAM that hadn't exploded,
that they dragged off,
that they put. So you know that compound that you were talking about, where Clem and Barney were. Behind there is where they dug it in.
That was a fishbowl behind there, wasn't it?
Yes, and that
loads
was like
of rifles guys,
and it was super dangerous place. I've got another story about that.
We took over that place as well and lived there.
Well, we did a clearance patrol through there. Anyway, so they dug this IED in, but it was really weird where it was. So either side of where it was, there was 15-foot mud walls.
Which are rock hard.
And there were cars driving up and down it. So it was a radio-controlled IED. So we went up there to clear it, and the EOD came out. And as they were digging it, it was like, how big's this table? 3 foot? 3 foot in length?
This?
Yeah. 3-4 foot. I don't know.
If you think this is 3 foot, how big's your? This is about 5 foot.
Is it?
Yeah. This is 3 foot.
It was about that big, right?
6 foot.
And then cylindrical was if you put your arms and you make a circle out in front of you. That's how big it was.
That's massive.
In the ground.
Yeah.
And it got put onto a trailer on the back of a quad. And I was looking at, I'm thinking I might have some photos of it somewhere. I might have, I don't know. But I was like, oh my God. If this had gone off, it wouldn't have just taken the person out. It would have took out the whole fucking village.
Yeah.
That's how big it was.
I've got videos of JDAMs being dropped on compounds and they just obliterate them.
But yeah, I mean, that one, where we found that IED, it was kind of like leading on to the story I was saying about. So we were clearing this pathway for the guys behind us. So it was a company plus coming up to clear this road where the IED was. And we just got up to like a little, I guess you could call it like a vulnerable point, but it was the only way that the vehicles could get out onto the road.
Okay.
And there was a little low, like mud wall. Mm-hmm. And the mortars lads had been tasked to go and do protection. We'd all been given locations to go and do like overwatch protection while they're digging up this IED. And lad's name I'm not going to mention because his family might listen or something like that. But the mortars lads went off and they went through a vulnerable point. Don't know what happened because we were a little bit further up and we just heard the explosion. And my front man at the time, a guy called Braw, he valloned as fast as he could down the road and we got to them. And I don't want this to sound like it's any disrespect to the mortars lads, but they hadn't been on the ground like we had. Mm-hmm. So they were spread out, a little bit of all-round defence. Some of the lads were trying to work on this lad. And when we got there, this is really... It's going to sound really weird considering the guy just got blown up by an IED. All I remember from that is that he was lying on the floor and it just looked like he was just lying on the floor with his clothes on and that was it. There was no blood. There was no anything. This is what I remember. And my brain might have knocked it out. Mm. So I got all the lads round and I pushed them out into the security, pulled Reedy in, who was the sergeant major, and they called the MERT in, so the medical emergency response team came in on the Sea King, I think it was, or it might have been the Black Hawk.
Black Hawk.
Yeah. So they came in on that and they landed, and as they landed, you were talking about the wait for the helos to come in to blow a second IED device up. Well, the cheeky little fuckers had gone round into the compound that was adjacent, so we weren't on that side of where they were, and they were firing at the MERT, so the helo had landed probably about like 50 to 60 metres away, but he got thrown on super quick and flown off. Subsequently, he died, unfortunately. But I went back. I'm talking about me a lot here, anyway. Anyway, carry the story.
But it's you in the story. I'm watching your face, and this is nobody can see this, but I'm watching your face as you tell this story. And what I love about this, for people like us who have been there, is you can get lost in the story as you're telling it because you're reliving it partially, but also, I mean, I don't know if you feel like this. You feel like a fraud telling the story because it's half of the stuff that we say is unbelievable, but we know it's real. And I'm looking at your eyes, which are completely focused. Mm. So, people go, oh, steely-eyed warrior.
That's not.
It fucking is, because when you look in your eyes, they'll see through you. So it's awesome to listen to you tell stories about.
Well, so anyway, the MERT got flown off, and I remember going back. So the whole op got cancelled. Mm. So we made our way back and we went back to the location that we were secured in. And I remember just sitting there, and there's only 2 times I've ever really cried. Mm. And that was one of them because, oh my God, I'm going up now. I almost felt like it was my fault. But what really annoyed me about this was, again, I'm not saying who it was.
Did he have ears like this?
Yeah.
All right, I know you're talking about.
So afterwards, we had a little bit of a debrief, and he basically said, we've just lost a guy to day 1, week 1 of our SRI training, which is the pre-training you do when you land in theatre before you deploy. And we'd already been on the ground like 3 or 4 months. And I took that really personally. Like, it affected me a lot, because it was almost like, even though it wasn't aimed at me, it was a general comment. But I just got up and I walked out, and I was so angry, so angry. And Reedy was a sergeant major. I think he's a major now, maybe. And
he's fucking sound as well.
And he came up and he calmed me down. And I was like that. I lost a little bit of respect for that person then. But that was probably the only other time that I ever cried was on Jacana. We'd been yomping for ages. Got to the top of this mountain, told that to move.
Have you seen that picture on Facebook? And it's, I think it's what's your idea of hell? And it's a picture of like these Americans and a guy at the front saying "contact front," and the bloke miles away. For fuck's sake! But
that's literally what it was. We yomped up this, like it was a mountain. We were like 20,000 feet up. Got to the top and we got told, this is where the CEO is. You can't be here. And I was looking around, like my feet were hurting. I'd been walking all day.
One sleeping bag between two because you're carrying ammo.
Long story short, we ended up bivvying up somewhere, and I said, I'm going to go for a poo, as you do. And I walked off, and I just sat there for a little bit and went, oh my God, and just had a little bit of a cry, if I'm perfectly honest, because it was just so Belson.
It's so hard. Belson is a word that comes from the concentration camp in World War II.
It is, so I probably won't say it again.
Which means it's fucking hard.
That's how bad it was,
It's brutal, because that statement is a crass statement based upon, one of your brothers in arms. And what it shows is the level of responsibility that individual people take for everyone else. And I think that certainly spawns from what we did with J Company, where we were the vanguard for everything. And we took huge responsibility for what happened, because you're in a position of fire sport all the time. This will sound cheesy, and other people in our this flies is doing my head in. Other people in our line of work might says it sound Chad or whatever, but I don't really, like Goggins says, fuck people. I don't care what anybody else thinks, and I think we're in a position where we can say, I don't care what you think. But that attitude, ads, in my opinion, is what heroes are made of, which sounds cheesy and Chad, but it's absolutely what heroes are made of. It's a person who will take responsibility even though they haven't been delegated that authority by somebody who's allowed to delegate authority. It's the basis of a fine, upstanding person that we all should be in a community. So you're fucking hoofing, man.
How did you find that tour anyway? I mean, I've talked for probably about 20 minutes about now, and I've come to do a podcast with you, and I've talked about me.
Yeah, well, so I was with Delta Company, and I felt restricted straight away because I didn't have a very good relationship with my OC. I'm not going to say his name, but I still think he's a bell end. And I didn't get to deploy. Great Sergeant Major, really good friend of mine. I'm not going to say his name either, but he's the Phoenix, forever young. he's like Benjamin Button. He gets younger looking and more handsome with each year that it passes, and I hope he listens to this because he is a legend of a bloke. And we went out, and we took over at Kajaki off the rifles. I went out 2 months later on because I was doing a hospital test for that bleeding hole syndrome that I had, and the guys went out, and I don't really want to talk about Kajaki because of some things that are controversial that really pissed me off. But basically, we left Kajaki and then moved down to Sangin, and then we moved into Bravo Company's tactical area of operations, which was, I've got to think about the cardinal bearings now. I think where Sangin was, it would be west. Northwest.
It was north, so it was up the Sangin Valley.
Okay, so it was going north. So we came into Sangin, and then we went to take over Barney and Clem's position up that road, wherever that road is, and whatever that FOB was called, so the forward operating base. And we did a few patrols, and it was it was all right. I felt really pulled back by my OC, who I think he felt like I was going to go gung ho because of a reputation that I might have had, which isn't the case. Everything is measured and it's deliberate. And I was a sergeant then as well, rather than a corporal, so I wasn't a commander. And there's a huge difference between being a corporal, being a lieutenant, being a
You're more of an example setter.
You are. You're there to do the administration and make sure everyone's okay, and be a mentor for the commander. But you don't have the active leadership role, which was difficult for me because I am a natural leader, an extrovert, and gobshite, and want to be at the front. And hey, everyone, look at me, and I can manage to pull it off in many situations. But it wasn't my time to shine at the front. It was everybody else's time to shine. So for me, it was a damp tour. But there was a few things that happened. We would do sort of QRF things, going from whatever that checkpoint is down to Jackson, and we were trying to build the defences from the road, because the road was moving north, and then you would come off the road and go up a steep incline, which was completely exposed to sniper shots. And where this fob was, you could get, if you were the enemy, you could get eyes on from thousands of meters away directly to this overexposed position in which we were in. It's only once you were behind the Hesco Bastion walls, which are these pull-out baskets that you then fill with dirt and sand, that you had any protection. You can still fire mortars into you, and that was just west of the fishbowl, so an open area that was dangerous. But where your fob was, you just had to look over the Hesco Bastion, and that's where people were living. So you were surrounded all of the time. So we had a few people shot. We had an engineer shot in the face on sentry. He died. One of my guys shot in the chest as he was driving up. A guy called Kev. I think we had two or three people shot on the sentry. So we tried to armour it. So we got armoured glass out of Mastiffs. And we would drive down and pick them up in trailers. And one time I went down to Jackson, and then was driving back, and then a bit of Herrick 5 came in. The market was full, and I was like getting the guys to beep their horn, because they should move out the way for ISAF. And I was like, fuck this, everyone's crowding round, just drive. And so in the Mastiff I was in, we just drove off, and then I heard "Drrrr," and it wasn't machine gun fire, it was the bar armour knocking against an ANP, so an Afghan National Police Hilux, and it went brrr along the back of it and pushed it into a ditch, also pushed another car into the ditch, and then we drove off with all our stuff back to the fob, and then just heard beep beep, and they got these blue AMP Hiluxes bombing off up to this AMP checkpoint, which we had to go past, and then the Afghan National Police coming out with RPGs and machine guns because they thought we tried to attack them, because they heard this sound as well, and they're going fucking ballistic in front of us. And there's a guy called Bimps, who I'm mates with on Facebook, and he's a hoofing bloke, who was on a Husky, who was like, fuck it, what are we going to do, and some of our top gunners were like, shall we shoot, because these Afghan National Police are pointing machine guns, PKMs, and AK-47s and RPGs at our vehicles. And then what I've got to remember is I'm in a vehicle that can take an RPG and can take machine gun fire, whereas I was used to Jackals and Wimmick, where, you
you can't.
You just I would just shoot them. Wouldn't even think twice about it. They'd be dead. And there was a bit of a standoff and nearly an international incident, which was something. Another one was, if you went north on the Wadi, there was that 5-story building. I don't know if I mentioned this the last time. There was a contact, and one of the troops, so one of the rifle troops of the company, was in there.
Is this one that used to be a hotel back in the day?
I think it was. It's 5.
Yeah.
I think they called it Airport Hotel.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And they had a contact, and in there was. Oh, I did talk about this. This was a time when I said, "Lads, go downstairs," and then the 2IC of the ANA was closing in on me, and I thought, I'm just gonna have to pull my pistol out and just shoot everyone in the face. Did I talk about that?
No.
Oh, right, okay. This is a fucking. If I've spoken about it before, because I'm like a broken record player, but a really good looking record player, and So we had a rifle troop, so 30 blokes that were in this location called the Airport Lounge, which was on the side of the Wadi going north from the Sangin district centre. So our FOB Jackson, the base. And the Taliban had contacted them, so they had a firefight. And then we were the QF, so the Quick Reaction Force, back at our FOB. One of the pieces of equipment had gone missing. I want to say CTLS?
Or CWS?
No, laser rangefinder.
Okay.
I think it's called a CTLS.
CWS. No, that's...
just said the same thing twice.
I'll just agree with you, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a box that sees at night and you can point it and it gives you direction.
Sophie.
No, that's
Carry
a
on.
Fables site. So it's about this big. I think it's called a CTLS. And it does a laser range find, so you fire a laser and it tells you how far away things are, so you can target correctly for weapon systems and get their range drums put on properly. You can also take bearings from you to somewhere, so you can call in fire missions with a correct bearing from planes and bombers and people, and then you can take different bearings from targets that you've already laid out, so you can do multiple directional bearings for other things as well. And it's got a day and night sight. So it's an amazing bit of kit, and it's probably about 5 inches by 5 inches. Fantastic. So one of those went missing. So it's a piece of equipment that's attractive to terrorist and criminal organisations, which is something we call ACTO. So I went down as a QRF commander to investigate. So I drove down, reversed my Mastiff up, and then you get out this armoured door. Then you have to jump out, walk along, jump over a wall, and then go into the bottom floor. So another area for shooting people. So everything you do, everywhere you move, you're moving from cover to cover, kind of like in Full Metal Jacket, where the sniper's just picking dudes off. So the potential's there. And if you thought about it, you go crazy. But you just got to do what you got to do, just like in life. So I went in, spoke to some people. Down the bottom was some, I don't know, army guys. And then the different floors were populated by different people. And then the top floor... Yeah, the top floor before the roof, that's where the ANA, so the Afghan National Army were. And then there was the roof area. So I went up and I spoke to our guys on the roof. So what happened? You know, get a bit of situation awareness. This is where we did this. Then I put those, I was looking through there to get a target. Then I put those on the wall. And then I went around and I fired some more rounds. And then looked back and it had gone. And they had ANA up with them as well. And clearly, that was 1 + 1 equals... The ANA stole the fucking piece of equipment, because the ANA came from different areas and they were drafted into that location. And normally what you found is the commander of the ANA patrol or platoon, he was cool, but when he went on his leave, the 2IC, so the second in command, would take over, and the 2IC of the platoons were always absolute wankers. So I came down and started to speak to the 2IC because the commander was on leave. Obviously all these guys are off their face on opium, absolutely wasted, and I'm saying, oh right, we've lost this bit of equipment, and he's taking it as if I'm having a slight to his honour, and he's fucking shouting in my face and going, you know, being very aggressive, and I'm like trying to calm him down. No, we just want to find this bit of equipment because the dushman, which means enemy in Pashtun, you know, he's gonna get these, and he's gonna cherry day, so he's gonna make an explosive and blow us up. Anyways, he's going ballistic. And he's like, look, you've got all your guys here with weapons. You've come here. And I was like, no. And he's like, send them away. So we have something called a link man. So when we move through buildings, we always have somebody at a doorway so that you can maintain communication and eyes on. So observation of people who are moving forward in different bounds for an objective. So there was a link man there. And I was like, and there was a couple of guys in the stairwell, and I was like, guys, just go down the stairs a sec, hoping that they knew to keep a fucking link man at the stairs to keep an eye on me. But they all just fucking went downstairs to talk to their mates from the other troop. So I'm like, fuck, they've gone. And meanwhile, I think there's about 15 ANA guys started to swarm around me, and you just look in their eyes, bloodshot to shit because of opium, and this guy's going fucking bonkers. And I just thought, this is one of those times where I thought, this is it. And I've got 13 bullets in my Browning pistol. It's cocked, loaded, made ready. I'm going to have to. So I put my hand on my pistol, and I just knew I'm going to have to just shoot this 2IC straight in the face, and then just go bang, bang, bang around this crescent of guys circling me. until I've killed as many people as possible before they kill me. That's how intense this argument had got. And I was like, fuck, there's no way out of this because my link man's gone. I've got no support. And this bloke's spitting in my face with rage. So that was kind of a worrying time. But I managed to calm him down but I was prepared to fucking shoot him.
But there's so many situations like that.
Oh,
like
loads of them.
But somebody like with not so much your calm and assertive nature would potentially have done that.
Yeah.
Which would have caused...
You put an American in there, fuck me, they fucking mow them down with machine gun.
Or the right one.
yeah, put the right one. Jesus.
Yeah.
What's another one? So there was loads of other ones. There was clearance in the Sangin Valley again, which was quite slow for me, but I met a really great guy called Dan Feder, who was a Master Sergeant, EOD.
Well, this was when the Americans came up, the 82nd Airborne and a load of the Pathfinders, and there was a bunch of other... It was like an international up silver again, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
From Herrick 5.
The reason why we had left Kajaki in the first place is I think the 82nd... Oh no, it was an artillery unit that took over from us in Kajaki, and they wanted to kill all the dogs that were up there. Dogs are hoofing in Afghanistan. They're absolutely hoofing. Cats not so. They shit on your bed. But it's still lovely to have pets around. And that actually grounds you and keeps humanity close by, I think, by having those animals around. So they came in. We were in Nolay then, I think. No, we were in Sangin then. And then we did a clearance patrol. So we had this guy called Dan Feder and Justin Bauman, who I'm mates with on LinkedIn. And I got on really well with Dan Feder. Big, tall, bald, so cool as ass haircut, just like me. Guy, really funny, down to earth. He unfortunately died on that tour doing his job, like in Hurt Locker, when they literally, because these EOD guys, they literally pick up the wire and pull it and see what happens, and then go and fix the problem. Whereas our guys, they're a little bit more cautious. But he was doing that one day and got blown up by a secondary IED whilst he was defusing one IED. We were on the ground, cleared the Sangin Valley, and we were staying in buildings, and I was with a guy called Andy. I'm not going to say his surname, but he knows who he is. He's a big guy. Not fat, he's muscly. But they were staying in... Dan Feder was still alive then, but they were staying overnight into a building, so they seconded a building. And he put his elbow against the wall, and it crumbled. And on the other side of there were two, I think, a whole arm's width. So he put his arm in, all of... I think they're 25 or 45 litre containers full of HME. So what had happened is everybody had left, because there was very few contacts. It was fleeting as we were pushing forward, and then we occupied the area. So, but the direction in which we moved wasn't the right direction for them to get to the firing point, for the Taliban to get to the firing point. So they couldn't set off these IEDs. So they would have just taken out whole troops, so like 30 blokes plus, boom, boom. So it was all wired to blow as we pushed through, but luckily we pushed them in the direction that was not conducive to what their plan was. I had a Benelli shotgun then. First time I've ever carried a shotgun in this battle, which I love. It makes you feel like somebody in Predator.
No range on it though.
No. And it hurts you when you fire. There's nobody firing shotguns and going, yeah, that was easy. Did you fire a shotgun? Like, fucking Jesus Christ, that was horrendous.
Let's put this down and leave it for a little bit.
And it's only 8 rounds. So, so I had a Benelli shotgun and a pistol and a rifle. And then we moved from Sangin up to Nolay, where Alpha Company was, which was great because it was with some tankies, some heavy weapons guys there. And we were then just doing mobile patrols. And it was great because Nolay was a HLS, so a helicopter landing site for resupplies from Bastion, the big base, which had moved from my first tour, which was like just a bit of scrub, to a full-on town with 30 metre concrete walls and X-ray machines and Pizza Hut and Domino's and all that kind of shit. And you used to have a airdrop from I'm going to say a HIP? Russian HIP, which is an armoured helicopter flown by drunk Russian pilots.
It's the Hilo in Rambo when he's in Afghanistan.
It's one of them. So it's definitely not the Hind, which
Yeah.
looks like a monkey with a respirator on.
Yes.
So it's not the attack helicopter, but it's armoured. So it's an armoured people carrier helo, basically. And for some reason, they just had this glut of steak. So we just had fresh cut steak every single day, cooked on corrugated iron. So that was great, and went out on some patrols. But again, this is one of the things that frustrated me, because the plan was to support local elections and try and bring some structure and governance to Sangin, which you're not doing. It's not there now. It wasn't there then, and it's never going to be there unless something really dramatic changes. So it's an absolute waste of time. And you can see that when you've been on operations before, and you can read what the patterns are like. So we would dominate high ground as in an effort, and I'm inverting commas with my fingers now that ads can see, in an effort to provide protection, or at least the image of protection around. But the thing is, the local people don't give a shit. They just want to crack on with their life. So you dominate high ground. The rule in Afghanistan is don't cover the same ground twice, which can become challenging and difficult. But if it's high ground and you're moving along ridges, then you know not to go down there. So we would occupy a bit of high ground, go away, and then be ordered to go back. And then there'd be ID explosions. One of them, it blew up my OC's vehicle. So I went to go and help Kazivac them, but nobody was injured, but recover their vehicle. He was in his vehicle. No, don't come any closer, don't come any closer. But I don't believe I'm meant to die in warfare, which is silly, but it's a belief that I have. So I just walked up to his vehicle. He goes, there's a mine right next to the vehicle. But it wasn't. It was one of the hubcaps off a Jackal. I was managed to calm them down, get them out. Then we had to drive back to Nole. So this is a good 40k. Drive back to Nole, pick up an SVR, which is a recovery truck. So it's a £1 million big truck with a hook on it to pick up this other armoured vehicle. Had a stake. Go and get it with a new vehicle for the OC, and then take the broken vehicle back. So me and Boxhead went back in 2 Jackals to move this vehicle back for recovery. Some sporadic shooty fire, like pinged off, nothing major. But there was one where Boxhead had gone down a little bit of ground and then partially went over an IED, which partially detonated. And this was again like 50-litre containers of homemade explosives. So half of it had exploded. I got my guys to get out of their Jackal, and then I got in the driver's seat and then drove up to the rear of their vehicle. Got them to jump on my vehicle so that they didn't have to drive off it. Then I jumped in their vehicle whilst they drove my vehicle away, and then I drove off the bomb. And you could see as you're driving off, because you're driving slowly, you're thinking, I hope the rest of this doesn't go off. But I was kind of confident that the initial detonator had failed, so there was no other secondary detonator. But it could have been, But I didn't have kids then. I didn't have my own children then, so I kind of didn't really give a shit about the risk, and then brought it back in. But I fell out of my OC a few times. But it was a great time to push the boundaries of finding IEDs as well, because what they would do, they were so innovative. You'd be doing Valonin just yourself as you're looking around, and then you come to a mound, and then there'd be like a bayonet in a mound and some bullet links, some round links. So with machine guns, they're linked by little steel chains, and when you fire and then move, all that steel's left over. So they collect it and put it places so that it stops you. So once you get a signal of your Valen, you've got to clear that area. You can't bypass it unless you get ordered to. So I found a bayonet once and some link in a mound of ground, which was obviously there for a reason, for a secondary attack or a lead on to an attack. They used to get lights, so car lights, the plastic car lights, and then put a trigger inside it, so when a vehicle drove over, a crack in the light, it would then activate and then detonate a charge. But you'd find these on the ground that we'd already taken over, and we would tell our commanders, why the fuck are we going back to this same ground? It's basically a death wish. And then we'd find these things, and you're only supposed to move some debris away enough to go, that's an ID. And then you call in something called a 10-liner, which is an EOD report to the demolitions. What are they called, EOD?
EOD, yeah.
Yeah, EOD. I wonder what the American ones are called. Can't remember. The EOD, and then they'll fly in. But they were so busy because they had so limited people, it takes fucking ages. So you then stuck on the ground and then became a target again around this one ID. And then they come in and go, right, everyone stand back, stand back. And you're like, come on, mate, we've been here for 12 hours walking around this thing. But the more that you could identify, the quicker they would come. So you'd have like a paintbrush, because you might have seen pictures with guys, and they've got a paintbrush on one side, which is for cleaning their weapons and finding bombs. And then you'd sort of like uncover loads of this bomb and then just put some of it back, as long as it doesn't go on the trigger. But it was an interesting tour. It was my last tour of Afghanistan. One of my recruits in training got hit by a suicide bomber. I was watching the rover camera. Yeah, the rover camera, watching their patrol, and he was walking along. A guy called Ads. I won't say his surname, but Ads, and then you just see this old guy in a white dish dash. I don't know how racist that sounds, but that's what we call him. Dish dash and a white turban, big white beard, elder, approach the patrol, and then just poof, flash on the camera, and then a Kazivac. And then he came in, and I saw him. He wasn't part of my company, but I actually felt some emotion towards it. This is a guy that I took through training, and we weren't especially good friends because I was a recruit instructor and he was a recruit, and you know what that means. You know, you have some banter, but you're not Bezzy Oppos. But he's a fellow commando, and I knew him because I taught him with some other corporals how to become a commando. So you feel responsible for the people that you teach and coach and mentor. And I feel very privileged to be one of the people who had the hands on his stretcher to take him to the casualty evacuation helicopter. And I think he ended up, this will sound a bit strange, he ended up a bit fucked up from it, physically and mentally. And you know, as this man who's sat across me knows, being blown up is not a fun experience. It's certainly a brutal thing that will affect you forever. I've lived this charmed life where I've kind of like dodged everything. Even people that died in J Company, I wasn't there, I was on leave. So I've just lived this charmed life. I mean, burst eardrums and shot at with RPGs and things that have partially exploded near me, but nothing like you guys. So I count myself very lucky with that.
Well, on that note, I'll spin one last story before we wrap this up. So again, very similar where the Americans were taking over, and I was put in with the EOD, American EOD team, and they had this vehicle called a Buffalo. I keep saying Gruffalo because that's what I called it.
Yeah.
Mega digressing. I call surf breaks lots of different things. Like there's a surf break in Portugal called Carapetera, and I call it carrots and potatoes.
Yeah.
There was another one called Arifan. I used to call it Hairy Fanny.
Yeah.
So I used to call it different. I forget. Yeah. Anyway, I was in this vehicle with these EOD guys, and on this vehicle, the Gruffalo, it's got a big digger arm on the end of it. So their guys, they have two vehicles at the front when they're clearing. So we were clearing the 611 from Inkerman all the way back down to Jackson because it was the most IED'd stretch of road probably on the planet at the time.
Had they put that matting down on it?
No.
Because it was supposed to be like anti-ID matting, wasn't it? Built into the road.
Well, this was nothing like that. So basically, these two vehicles, they were basically made of sticks. And they had sensors in them. And there was like, all I can explain is it's like a corn cropper in a field with like little spray canisters on the bottom. And as it goes along, it detects it. It sprays onto the floor. They reverse out the way. The Gruffalo comes along with this big digger arm, digs up the IED from the floor, puts it to one side. The guys get out in the vehicle that I was in, and then they blow the IED up, and that's how they go down the road like that. Mental.
Fucking hell, how long does that take?
Well, it took like 4 days.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Anyway, at the end of the first day, it was dark. There's a few other contacts where I was calling in like the Apaches to shoot some guys in in a bun line and stuff. But that's another story for another time. We were going back towards Inkerman, and in between, like where the houses were on the side of the road was elevated a little bit, and down the little side streets there were like what I could only call as little mud garages. And we were driving back towards that, and they fired a 107 rocket, and normally when it hits something it explodes, but it didn't this time. And I was sat in the Gruffalo, and there were 6 chairs, so 3 either side, and then a driver and a commander in the front. So the rear passenger side is like 6 chairs, and I just plunked myself where I was, and I literally had a radio that I put the antenna out the window, and that's what I was calling in air and stuff like that.
Okay, so were you just liaising with
I was
the
just the
Gruffalo?
liaison.
Yeah.
I was the only British guy within the American convoy, and then all the lads were in like over watch protection from their PBs while we were clearing along the 611.
Yeah.
Anyway, it got dark. We cleared as far as we could, and then we were driving back, and they fired this 107 rocket, and instead of exploding, it went straight through the vehicle, but it went through the seat that was in front of me, went straight through the other side. They fired another one, and it went into the engine block of the Gruffalo.
Fucking
We
hell.
managed to limp back to Inkerman.
How big is a Gruffalo? A buffalo.
A buffalo. How big would it? It's
432 size.
as big as a minibus, but
Okay.
but armoured, higher,
Wheeled or tracked?
wheeled, yeah, and with a big crane on the front of it, like just to dig. Nothing like mega heavy duty, but it was
Is it
enough.
size of an MRAP?
Smaller than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's basically like the size of like a long wheelbase minibus, like a 1620 seater. That's how big it was.
Yeah.
But we got back, and I was like, when I keep talking about cat lives, about I've nearly
Yeah,
died,
yeah,
died
yeah,
again.
yeah.
That was one of them, and I was like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah. Well, I was talking to my missus about a job opportunity that's come up with a friend that we both share, and it's awesome, but it's also insane as well, which I think I'm going to take should it come up. But I was talking to her about. She said, "Would you go back to a place like Afghanistan?" I was like, "Yeah, fucking would," because I've got such great memories of it. I love the place. I think it's beautiful. I love the intensity. I love the excitement. I love the people. It's kind of like going back to the beginning of where you said, at one point you were one of the lads and you were in this group and it was warm and fantastic. So I yearn for that as well. And and as strange as this sounds, and everyone goes, you shouldn't do things for medals. You shouldn't do things for medals. But it's really great to get a medal. Like amazing achievement and recognition, and you have so much pride to get it because of what it's attached to and who it's attached to and the experience it's attached to. I love the idea of going somewhere else and being in a massive battle and having a great time and being super successful and then coming out and getting awarded for it. I think that's fantastic. But since I've had kids, and then all the time I've had in which to think about the things that we have done together, I think I've used up all of my lives as well. I think I've turned into a bit of a pussy. I'm risk averse.
Well, you haven't. You've just grown, and your mentality has changed through the experience that you've had, and you've had time to reflect on it as well, which inadvertently, subconsciously will change your mindset from that blasé, I'm going to drive with no drive in my vehicle into a contact, and then somebody else has got to drag me out mentality to being, do you know what? It's maybe not a good idea.
No, it's not. And also, in that evolution of life, is we've had our time. And now you don't need to prove anything to yourself or anyone else. And that's a really, really nice place to be. I think, like now in my life, this is the most balanced and peaceful that I've ever been. And that is a great position to be in, to be around like my children. As a single dad and raise them. I know I've said single dad a few times, but even as a married father like yourself, to raise your children and be a good husband, it's all amazing. And the fact that our lives were used up and that you have this one life, inverted commas, left, then that is the most precious life. So you use it in the best way possible. So I'm really happy that we had the experience. I'm really happy that we got to fire loads of bullets, and we had lots of bullets fired at us, and bad guys may have died. Unfortunately, friendly guys and friendly girls have passed away. And that is absolutely upsetting and a terrible thing. But altogether, it creates memories and experiences that I've had that then shape me to be the best person I possibly can be, and hopefully leave the world in a better place in which I found it. And that might just be leave the world in a better place than when I was 18 and a gobshite, arrogant, aggressive person, to actually maybe me helping a little old lady with her shopping across the road. That might be good enough. And I might not have done that before, whereas I'm going to do it now because actually we've experienced life and death and conflict, whereas the important thing is peace and everybody getting on. And for me, that's what Afghanistan really was, a lesson in humanity. A brutal lesson, but they all have to be brutal.
So I was going to close on that point because it's pretty pertinent. However, I'm going to dash what you've just said now and lower the tone massively. While you were talking, I was thinking about, we were sat on the side of a plateau and we both went to have a poo together. Do you remember? You went off for a crap and then I came and sat next to you, literally pulled my strides down and curled one out, and you were like that. What are you doing? I was like, I'm having a shit. And I think you were quite disgruntled about that a little bit, I think.
Well, you have fucking brought the tail. I thought I'd left it. I thought I'd have people like sending me their bras and pants from what I said at the end. But that's also one of the fucking most amazing things about you. I was talking to Ads earlier on, and Ads is the sort of person, I said this before, Ads is the sort of person that you'd be at your wedding day that you spent fucking thousands of pounds on. The bride's family would be there. Everybody, and she could be, because bootnecks, we punch well above our weight from a really well-to-do family. And then the vicar would say something like, does anybody have any reason why these two shouldn't be married? And Ads is the type of bloke who would stand up on a chair and shout, he's gay. I know he is. Oh, he's such a prick.
Mate, thanks for talking to me again on the podcast.
Absolute pleasure, brother.
Beautiful. And that's it. If you like the podcast, please like, share and subscribe on your podcast provider. Also go to Instagram and Facebook and leave a little message and I'll get back to you. Thanks for listening.